By August 2023, the internet was convinced King Von's hitman had just beat the case. Headlines popped up saying the charges were dropped, fans argued all day in the comments, and everybody started throwing around words like innocent. But once you start actually looking at the paperwork, the footage, and what's been happening since that night in Atlanta, the story gets way more complicated than a simple win or loss. Because this isn't just a random parking lot fight that turned fatal. This is a case where a rising Chicago star died in front of a hookah lounge. An off-duty cop started to let off. A young rapper from Savannah ended up with a colostomy bag. And the state of Georgia quietly decided, we're not taking this body charge to trial. On top of that, you've got rumors of $1 million bounties, a federal murder-for-hire plot, and a guy who keeps saying he was just protecting his friend, even while half the world calls him a villain. So today, we're breaking down exactly how Lul Timm went from King Von's alleged hitman to case dismissed, what really happened the night Von died, and why this story sits in one of the grayest areas you'll ever see. Before the news reports ever called him King Von's alleged suspect, Lul Timm was just Timothy Leaks from Savannah, Georgia. He wasn't some huge name star, he wasn't charting, he wasn't all over radio. If you knew him, you probably knew him as Quando Rondo's right hand and a quiet dude who moved more like a soldier than like the artist in the spotlight. He had some music out, tracks like Off the List, and little pockets of fans who rocked with him, but he wasn't a headline name. In his own interviews, he talks about already having been shot once before all this, already knowing what it feels like to be hit, to bleed, to lay there wondering if you're gonna make it. Violence wasn't some movie to him, it was real life. But he was still in the shadows, the guy in the cut making sure his people were straight, not the face of some national story. All of that changes in less than a minute. One night in Atlanta, one stretch of pavement outside Monaco Lounge, and suddenly his name never gets mentioned again without King Von's attached to it. It's November 6th, 2020, Atlanta. It's late, the club is clearing out, and two very different worlds pull up to the same spot. On one side, you've got King Von, one of the most talked about drill rappers out of Chicago, OTF, real street reputation behind the music. On the other side, you've got Quando Rondo, NBA Youngboy affiliate, Savannah native with his own buzz and fan base. The internet had already been playing referee between those camps for months, screenshotting lives, dissecting lyrics, turning every little sub into a big beef. So when both entourages end up outside the same hookah lounge at the same time, it's like gasoline and a match sitting in the same room. Surveillance footage that leaked online, plus what eyewitnesses and investigators describe later, all tell a similar story. Von spots Quando, hops out the truck, and walks straight toward him. There's no talking, no circle-up argument, no long build-up. Von closes the distance and starts swinging. To a lot of fans, that's the "he kept it real" moment. To a courtroom, that's called an attack. Within seconds, the whole parking lot erupts. People rushing in, arms grabbing, everybody moving in different directions, and that's when you see another figure jump out the truck. Small frame, hoodie, gun in hand. That's Timothy Leaks. From his own mouth on Vlad TV, he says he pulled the trigger about 4 times, and the gun jammed on either the 3rd or 4th shot. He's not calculating angles, he's not counting bullets, he's looking up and seeing his man getting swung on in the middle of chaos. In his mind, right or wrong, this was the moment he'd always pictured. If somebody ever ran up on his little brother, it was his job to do something about it. The thing is, they're not alone in that parking lot. Off-duty Atlanta police are working the club that night. When those shots ring out, they respond. According to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, a total of 6 people got shot around that lounge. 2 of them died from their wounds, King Von and another Chicago man named Mark Blakely. Tim gets hit too, twice, when officers fire back. People are diving for cover, running between cars, trying to figure out who's shooting and where it's coming from. For everybody on Instagram, this is a quick clip. For the people on that pavement, this is a war zone that lasted less than a minute. When the shots stop, the internet doesn't see what happens next. Tim says his left leg wasn't really working that night. His right hip was burning, and he didn't even realize he'd been shot in the backside until the hospital told him the next morning. He pulls himself up using the back of the truck, limps to the door, and somehow ends up in the driver's seat. His only thought is getting Quando in the car and getting out of there before more shots start flying. From his perspective, the weapon is jammed, he's injured, his partner's just been in a full-on fight, and he doesn't know who else in that parking lot might be reaching. They pull off. At some point, as he's bleeding and starting to fade, Quando has to take over the wheel because Timm is losing energy. They head to the nearest hospital, and that's where this story takes another left turn. He says when they first get there, the doors are locked. COVID protocols, the staff inside are panicking, not sure what's going on outside, and he's stuck in that weird space between I'm a patient and I might be a suspect. A random woman standing outside helps him to the door, talking to him, telling him he's gonna be okay. He doesn't know her name, doesn't know who she is, just remembers a brown-skinned lady trying to keep him calm while he's leaking. Eventually, staff come out with a wheelchair, bring him in, cut his clothes off, put the little mask thing on his face, and then it's lights out, straight into surgery. When he wakes up, everything is different. He's not just stitched up, he's got a bag attached to his stomach. A colostomy bag the doctors tell him his colon had to be rerouted so he could even stay alive. That means for the foreseeable future, he's not using the bathroom like a regular person. Everything comes out into that bag. On top of that, he's on a liquid diet. No regular food yet. And while he's trying to process that, he looks over and realizes he's chained to the bed. He says the officer told him he was detained, not formally charged yet, but he's not stupid. He knows why there's handcuffs on his wrist. He's in pain, hooked up to machines, learning how to live with a bag on his side, and at the same time, he's trying to get answers from nurses about why there are cops in his room. When he finally gets moved to the jail side of the system, that's when he sees it in black and white. Taking a life. Not assault, not weapons charge, just taking a life. No number, no degree. Under Georgia law, a body is normally something you don't just walk out on. It's a non-bondable charge in most situations, but Timm's lawyers appeal to Superior Court and argue for bond, and the judge ultimately gives him a $100,000 bond, something you almost never see when somebody's accused of taking the life of a famous rapper in a case the whole world is watching. From there, the case just sits in that weird zone. Everybody knows he's the man police say pulled the trigger, but he's out on bond, still facing a felony unaliving charge, still supposed to go to trial. Behind the scenes, his lawyer is telling him something different than what the internet is saying. According to Timm, his attorney told him the video and facts lined up with a self-defense claim. He's got a friend being attacked first in a state with no duty to retreat in a chaotic scene where he didn't run up to start trouble. He responded to it. Georgia has a stand your ground law, meaning if somebody runs up on you or your people and you reasonably fear serious harm, you don't have to back up and run away before you defend yourself. That law is controversial. It's the same type of framework people say helped George Zimmerman beat the Trayvon Martin case. But the law doesn't care about Twitter debates. It's written into the books, and lawyers use it whenever they can. Georgia Bureau of Investigation, fast forward to August 20th, 2023, while fans are still arguing about when's the trial. Something quiet happens in the courthouse. Timm's lawyer releases a statement saying the case against Mr. Leaks was dismissed prior to ever being indicted. In plain English, the DA's office decided they weren't even going to take it in front of a grand jury case. They dropped it before that step. Reports at the time said prosecutors believed this was self-defense and that they didn't think they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt. No indictment, no trial, no jury, no guilty or not guilty verdict. Just case closed on the state's side. Now here's the part people get confused about. Charges being dropped is not the same thing as a judge saying you are innocent. It means the people in charge of putting you on trial looked at the evidence and said, we don't think we can sell this as murder to 12 jurors. Legally, Timm is not convicted, but emotionally, in the court of public opinion, that's a whole different story. Outside the paperwork, you've got real people hurting. Von's family and friends are grieving. His girlfriend at the time, Asian Doll, hopped online after the news broke and blamed the police in a now-deleted tweet, saying they were the ones who really took out Von, not Timm. From her perspective, from the perspective of fans who love Von's music, the idea of the alleged shooter walking away with no trial feels like a slap in the face. Meanwhile, on the other side, Quando and Timm are living with the idea that one night in Atlanta put a permanent target on their backs. The phrase "slide for Von" became a slogan, a chant, and a pressure point. After the incident, Quando was shot at in different incidents, including one in Georgia, where someone opened fire while he was at a convenience store. Then in 2022, in Los Angeles, he's at a gas station across from the Beverly Center with his cousin and friend Lul Timm, and a car pulls up, jump out and open fire. Quando survives, Pab doesn't. He dies in Kwando's arms, and you can see the raw pain on video as Kwando screams and breaks down on the sidewalk for the internet. That became another "see, the beef is still going" moment. For them, it's losing family. On top of that, rumors started flying about a 7-figure price tag on their heads. Different blogs, YouTubers, and pages repeated talk of $1 million bounty for anybody who could get to Timm or Kwando. Timm himself reacted to those rumors in interviews, basically saying, "Okay, cool, you can say that. But even if somebody wanted to collect, are they making it back home? Are they really going to see that money?" To him, it wasn't some scary, spooky story. It was more like, if you think you can cash out on my life, try your luck. Just understand I'm standing on 10 toes too. At the same time, his own mom ended up having to move and change her entire lifestyle. Whether every threat was real or just people trolling online didn't matter. When enough people say your son is a target, it's hard to sleep easy staying in the same place, around the same neighbors, on the same routine. And then you add a wild side story. Tekashi 6ix9ine goes on Vlad TV and claims Lul Timm scammed him out of $10,000 for a feature. He says he flew to Savannah, the label paid, they recorded a verse, and then paperwork never got signed, so the track never dropped. On the flip side, older clips show Timm telling a story where he claims he ran off with way more money from the situation. None of that is proven in a courtroom. It's all he said, but it adds another layer. Even after beating a high-profile case on paper, his name is still tied to controversy, beef, and viral headlines. This is what happens when a local Savannah rapper goes from unknown to infamous overnight. Every move, every rumor, every petty story gets magnified. So what does he say about all this? In his Vlad TV sit-downs, Timm doesn't talk like somebody who's happy about what happened. He doesn't sound like somebody bragging on a body of a famous rapper. In fact, when Vlad asked him how he felt after finally realizing it was King Von who died that night, he says something that raised his eyebrows on both sides. He basically says, if bro ain't do that move that night, he'd still be alive. In his mind, it was Von throwing those first punches that set off a chain of events. Neither side could pull back once it started. He doesn't get on camera, try to go viral, disrespecting the dead. He calls himself a humble person, says he could easily get online clout chasing and talking crazy. But that's not who he is. Even people from Chicago platforms have said he was surprisingly calm and humble about the whole situation, instead of basking in it. What you really hear in those interviews is how much the aftermath messed him up. He talks about the colostomy bag like it was a nightmare he never thought he'd live through. He'd always heard of people with bags, maybe seen it in a movie, but never stood next to a person who actually had one. So, when the doctor explains he'll be using the bathroom through a bag now, he starts asking 1,000 questions. Is this forever? When can I eat real food again? How does this even work? What happens when I go to jail? Are they going to help me? He's wearing a bag and he's facing a big felony case. That's a different level of stress. Doctors told him he might be on it 6 months to a year. A year came and went. He's still on the bag. He has to slowly move from liquids back to solid food, making sure his insides can handle it. He has to worry about leaks, smell, humiliation, basic human stuff. He even admits he asked the doctor if he'd be able to sleep with women again after surgery, because that's how off balance the whole situation had him. It isn't until April 2022 that he finally gets surgery to reverse it. When they go in and put him back together so he can use the bathroom normally again, he says he felt so grateful he wanted to tip every nurse, every surgeon, everybody in the room. He'd been told he might only needed a year, but it stretched to about a year and a half. When it finally came off, it wasn't just a medical procedure. It was like the first real sign that he might get his life back in some kind of normal form. Even then, he had to go back on liquids for a while, retrain his body, and deal with scar tissue. But compared to what it could have been, permanent bag, paralysis, or death, he calls himself blessed. At the same time, he's honest about the darker part of his mindset. When Vlad pushes him with those, if somebody took out your 5-month-old daughter, would you still say you don't wish jail on anybody? Timm admits straight up he would want revenge. He says he wouldn't be thinking about prison or laws, he'd just be thinking about what they did to his kid. That's the same street logic that keeps cycles of retaliation going for years. Even then, he acknowledges that when people act off that first wave of emotion, they end up sitting in a cell 20 or 30 years later wishing they'd thought it through. He doesn't present himself as some wise philosopher. He's still wrestling with the idea, what you feel in the moment versus what you'll feel after decades behind bars. While all this is happening on Timm's side, surgeries, interviews, case dismissal, the other side of the chessboard kept moving too. In October 2024, news breaks that Chicago rapper Lil Durk is arrested in Florida on an alleged bodies-for-hire plot. According to prosecutors, a group of men associated with him allegedly targeted Quando Rondo in 2022 as retaliation for King Von. Instead of getting to Quando, they allegedly ended up involved in another felony that brought federal attention. That's not blog speculation. That's from court documents and news reports talking about a full federal case with years of evidence behind it. So now, look at the scoreboard. Not from a fan point of view, but from real life. Von is gone. Pab is gone. Timm's been shot twice and lived a year and a half on a colostomy bag. Quando's been shot at multiple times and watched his cousin die in front of him. Lil Durk is facing serious federal charges in a case that could take away his freedom for decades. Dozens of other people have caught bullets, charges, or trauma tied back to the same night and the fallout around it. There are no winners in that list? None. Vlad says it in the interview. If things were reversed, if Quando had walked up on Von and started swinging, and one of Von's guys shot Quando to protect him, the internet would probably be praising Von's side, calling that shooter a hero for doing what he was supposed to do. But because the person who died is the one people love more, the narrative gets flipped. The law, on the other hand, doesn't care who had the better albums. It only cares who threw the first punch, who pulled the trigger, and what the state can prove. When you step back, it's ugly all the way around. The slide for Von talk, the flags, the diss songs, the lives, the podcasts. The only people who really profit are the courts, the feds, and the funeral homes. Fast forward to now, and the crazy part is Lul Timm isn't hiding. In 2025, YoungBoy launched his Make America Slime Again arena tour, and all through the fall, you kept seeing Timm pop up in city after city: Dallas, Minneapolis, DC, Atlanta. YoungBoy would bring him out on stage, and they'd turn the crowd up while performing that Durk and Von diss I Hate YoungBoy together. The Massa tour officially wrapped up November 12th, but those clips are still going viral. Lil Timm on stage, moving with one of the biggest rappers in the game, while half the internet calls him a legend for standing on business, and the other half says he should have never left that hospital in handcuffs.